Hello and welcome to this Affinity Photo iPad tutorial, which is the beginner's guide part 12. Now, as you can see on screen, there are 3 other tutorials that I've sort of highlighted here, and these links will also be in the description to this video. Now these links are here because I'm going to sort of mention them within this video. Now I have already done a sort of adjustment presets video where I mainly looked at the gradient map and recolor, and then there's also the one that I'd done last, which wasn't technically a beginner's guide, but it was looking at 4 ways to use levels to edit images. And lastly, there's a video made by somebody else, Digitally Fearless, where he looks at where is the histogram slider, and he looks at the iPad and desktop version. Now in his video the iPad is the last part of the video, but it is all in there, so I'm going to sort of touch on these in my video. So I just wanted to show you that the links are there in the description for this video. Now before I start the iPad tutorial, I want to have a quick look at the PC Mac version of Affinity Photo, and to pick up a point that I mentioned in my last iPad video, which was the 4 ways to use levels to make adjustments. Now in that I said I wasn't a big fan of the iPad's adjustment system, which was like these little circles that you click in and sort of adjust the numbers. I much preferred the sliders, and I also preferred having the histogram. Now some people have sort of mentioned that there is a histogram in the iPad version, and that there is, and it is the same histogram that you get in this tab up here in the PC version. But if I sort of add the levels adjustment, let me bring this down here. As you can see, the levels adjustment histogram is the same as what you get in this histogram up here. And the difference being, this histogram will alter as you make adjustments, whereas this one will stay the same. Now maybe it's just my age, or I don't always fully understand what's going on when this alters. I am much more comfortable using this static histogram, because basically the histogram shows you the distribution of pixels in an image. And you can see here this side, the left side, is the black and dark pixels, and the right hand side is the pure white and light pixels. So obviously, because this is a snowy scene which was taken February this year, and a picture of my garden, because there's a lot of snow and white in there, all the pixel range is pretty much in the light area of the spectrum. But the thing I like about this adjustment is the sliders that you can alter rather than entering. You can enter numbers, but I much prefer to use the sliders, because when you click and drag on this node, as you bring it over, it drags a line, and you can see exactly where you are dragging to on the histogram. But hopefully you can see in the corner up here, the histogram up there is altering as I'm making the adjustments. Now obviously these pixels are now moving to the darker range because I've now made the picture much darker, but I find it a lot easier just to sort of visually use this type of adjustment, where I can put the line at where the pixels sort of start appearing, and so wherever those pixels are in this particular histogram, these will now be the pure black pixels. And similarly, I can move the white slider over to the start of where the pixels begin to appear, so this will be where the pure white pixels will start to appear. Now as you can see, the histogram is up here is now sort of a representation of what is between these two lines. So I mean, it's pretty understandable in a sort of simple picture like this, but sometimes when you start to make adjustments, I find that this histogram up here, it gets a bit more confusing once more and more adjustments you add. It becomes much more confusing. Now this, as I said, is my own personal sort of bugbear with that particular histogram. I personally prefer this more static version, and each to their own, but that was quite why I sort of my little complaint about how the iPad version worked. So let us get on with looking at the iPad tutorial that this is all about. Okay, so now we're looking at the iPad version of Affinity Photo, and like I mentioned in that little bit earlier about the histogram that is available in the iPad version. Now this is covered in Digitally Fearless's tutorial, which explains it much better than I'm going to, but in the icon down the right, which has, it looks like a camera, and you click on that, and there you have the histogram that I mentioned that will alter and move as you make alterations. And you can click on the little drawing pin type icon at the top, which will sort of keep this open while you are making alterations on other things. So I'll just unpin that and close that down. And the main point of this tutorial is looking at making presets for adjustments. Now, like I said again in the beginning, I have already made one video about this, looking at like recolor and the gradient map, but I'm going to have a look at making presets of the sort of levels adjustments that I made sort of a template for in the previous video, because again, some people have sort of mentioned, why didn't I just make a preset? Well, the point of that video was to sort of help show people how to make templates, but I'm going to sort of make two of those levels adjustments and make them as presets. So the first thing I need to do is to open an adjustment menu and select levels. Now if I then come back to the camera icon to open the metadata panel, and I'll just pin that there, so when I make the alterations in the context menu, which is still down at the bottom, but it is for the levels adjustment, that histogram will show you how the pixels are sort of now being redistributed because of the alterations. So the first one I'm going to do is the split tone effect, and first thing we're going to do is we're going to select the red channel, and I'm going to alter first the black options, and in the presets one I set this at 10. So if I do that first of all, what this does is it makes moving the red channels, and we're sort of increasing it, we're making the darker pixels look more cyan. So I'm going to push this slightly more than I did in the previous video. Let's try this on 30 just to see how that looks, and as you can see, that is now much more of a cyan image. So if I then come to the white channel, and this time I'm going to like before I did it on 80%, which brings in a bit more sort of orange yellow into the lighter pixels, but now the cyan is sort of killing that a bit, and obviously it depends on each image. I'll reduce this down to 20. Yeah, so we now got a more orange showing in the lighter pixels. So I'm then going to come to the blue channel, and this time we're going to change the white or output white option, and I'm going to lower this down to 90. So now we've got a much more yellow image, and the cyan is still showing through. So we now sort of have a more split tone effect with the cyan and orange effect. So if I click on the little white arrow that is to the right of output white, we get a few more options, and one of them is add preset. So I'm going to tap on that, and then we just need to make a name for this, and I'm going to call this the split tone. And click OK. So that has now made a preset of that, and we will have to come back to that in a little bit. But as you can see from the histogram up here on the right, the distribution of the pixels is now moved much further over to the darker pixels than it previously was. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the reset option, come back to the main panel, put this back onto master in the options. So now everything is reset back as it was, and if I come to the levels adjustment, you can see I've still just got that one levels adjustment. Let's bring that back. Now this next one I need to change the blend modes, because I'm going to do the blend mode option, so I have to come off of this histogram and use the more option and change the blend mode by just tapping on the word normal, holding it for a little while, and then moving over to the left. And like I explained in the previous video, sort of multiply would make it darker, screen will make it lighter, and a more balanced version is overlay or soft light. And obviously you can pick whichever one you want, but I'm going to leave mine on soft light, and then come back to the layer menu, and we can look at the histogram. Again, the pixels are now moved all over to the darker side of the histogram. But again, I'm going to make a preset of this, and just click on add preset, and the name, I'm just going to call this blend mode. In fact, what I'll call it is blend mode only. So hopefully I know that that is just the blend mode that has been altered. So I can now, let me come off of that, and I will, let me delete this, or what I do is I start a new image, and I'm going to look for a picture. I think I'll use the same options I did in the last video, which was house. And then select this image, drag it over, and then use the menu up here to come to canvas, clip to canvas, so that image now fits, or the canvas now fits the image rather than the image trying to fit the canvas. So So let me shut the stock menu, and we are then going to come back to the adjustments menu, and I'm going to click and hold on the word adjustment at the top. Oh, it came up anyway, and then slide over to the left, and then we get the list of the adjustments. And if I just scroll up until I get to levels, what is now displayed are the presets that have been made. Now, darken and lighten were part of the package and were made by Serif, and then obviously the next two are the ones I've just made, which is split tone and blend mode only. So we'll have a look at split tone, and as you can see, the context menu for the levels adjustment has turned up, so you could then make more alterations if you wanted. And let's try the blend mode only. So if I come back to this menu here, it should be on soft light. There we go, it's on soft light because that was the adjustment that I had set in the preset. So if I come back to, and I'll put this onto the split tone, and then come back to the layers, we look at the more menu. See, this is now gone back to being on the normal blend mode because the alterations have been made in the channels rather than the blend mode. So you can see that's how the presets work, and they will work differently on different images. So what works on one image may not work on another. So with the adjustments, if I come back to the word adjustment, there we go, that will bring us back to the adjustment menu. And the same can be said of any of these adjustments. The only real difference will be LUT, but I will hopefully make this in a video further down the line. But if I let me pick one, let's try black and white. Now, as you can see along the bottom in the context menu, there is an add preset button on the far right, the last one. So all these adjustments have an add preset button, and if you then bring up this menu and come to say black and white, you can see there are a couple of presets that were made by Serif. So if I click on the warm one, that is how that affects that particular image. So that is the end of this tutorial, and that is how you can make presets for any of the adjustments. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.